Alright, so, hello everybody. For those of you who do not know, my name is Stephen Lilly. I am from the Turner Ashby TSA chapter. I am currently a senior. I've been participating in TSA competitions since 8th grade, and I've been asked to talk about Dragster design. Obviously, Dragster design is a little different at this point in the year because we can't go into schools, so it becomes a little bit harder to use power tools if you do not have access to them. I fortunately have access to them. I'm currently sitting in a woodworking shop. Some basic things that you will need to compete in Dragster design would be: need a pencil for your design, some kind of a measuring device. Millimeters is best because that is what the specs are written out as. A square to help with your design. French curves and triangles, or drafting triangles, will help with your design. And then obviously paper to do your design out on. Examples that I have of Dragster design since I've done it. I've done Dragster design for the last 4 years. 3 years. 3 years. First car that I did as a freshman is very, very simple design. Not a lot of bells and whistles to it. And then last year's design, I did a little bit more. I did kind of a different paint job. And then, because of weight requirements, I ended up having to hollow out a large portion of the Dragster itself to meet weight requirements. When it comes to designing your Dragster, you can make it as simple or as complicated as you want. I've seen people make a Dragster in a little over an hour, and I have seen people take a month and a half to make a Dragster. Some tips and tricks that I've come up with over the last couple of years from experience and from listening to other people. Number one, always look at your requirements, look at your specs, make sure that your car is in specs. Double check, triple check, have your buddy check it yourself again. And then come in the next day and do the same thing again. Freshman year, I said this was my car from freshman year. I raced this at the regional level and got first place with it. And I decided I want to try to improve it before Technosphere. I want to try to make it a little bit better, a little more aerodynamic, whatever. So I made this one. But I did not check my specs because this one is 2 millimeters too long, so it was disqualified at the very, very beginning without ever being raced. Always check your specs. Some other ideas: play around with materials. Unless you're a senior and this is your first time ever doing it, you do have time to play around with materials, play around with how you put things together. I mostly do cars like this with the wheels on the outside. A lot of people actually, like making what's called shell cars, where your wood body is a shell, and then you have your wheels inside. Those are extremely aerodynamic. They have a lot of benefits like that. I think that they're a little less stable in my opinion, so I just make open wheel cars like this. When you're playing around with different materials, you can use all kinds of different things. There are all kinds of different axle materials. This one here is made out of plastic. There are all kinds of different wheel designs. Some are heavier than others. I believe this These wheels here are about a gram or two heavier than these wheels. This car, if I can pull the axle out, this car I ended up using an aluminum rod for an axle and then a brass washer as a spacer between the body of the car and the wheel itself. Whereas for this car, and I think one other car that I've made, I have plastic axles and a plastic washer. Plastic materials are lighter than metal, obviously. However, there are some trade-offs. I could never really get the wheels on this car to spin as straight as when I was using aluminum rods for axles. And there are other materials that you can use for your axles. There are steel rods, brass rods, whatever, but those are heavier and therefore make your car a little bit slower. And it's all a balance trade-off of, do you want a harder material or do you want a material that is lighter? Another great tip that I picked up was put graphite in the axles of your cars. If you take a little bit of, look up online, Pinewood Derby graphite lubricant, I believe. It might be listed as a lubricant. It might not be. But powdered graphite, there's gray graphite and white graphite. I've only ever used gray graphite, but supposedly white graphite is a little bit finer, a little bit more lubricant-y, I guess would be the word. But essentially you put it in there and it helps to make your wheels. Essentially you would put the graphite into your axle hole, then put your graphite into your axle hole and then put your axle in, and then it makes your wheels spin really, really smoothly, which gets you a smoother ride down the track. When it comes to designing and painting your dragster, you can do almost anything. Freshman year I was kind of hooked on flames, so I did designs like this where it was like, oh, it's a rocket flying through the air. See here, sophomore year, I just painted it flat black and then did a little bat on it. Copyright hasn't come for me yet. And then last year I did kind of like a snakeskin type pattern using a laundry bag that I cut up. I painted it green, put the laundry bag over top of it, and then painted black for the scales. And you can do all kinds of shapes. This one here essentially looks the same as when it started out as a blank like this. And that's all I have.